the church is about 2,000 years old, which means the church has been through many storms before and trials, and she has weathered them. And so we have been able to deal with these issues, realizing that it's for our own good. And we have been able to make sacrifices.
Across the country, churches and other places of communal worship have been all but abandoned. It's not that parishioners aren't eager to return to daily or weekly service, but certain limitations on crowd sizes would essentially force celebrants to become selective of their congregation. Amid these COVID times, social distancing is very important. However, implementation should also be rational and proportionate.
There will be a church or place of public worship in any facility or public place which involves the participation of any member of the general public or a congregation is allowed to operate under the following conditions. No care how big the church, you can't have more than 10 people. So your church could be the size of Civic. You still can't have more than 10 people.
In the context of social distancing, physical space among persons in a queue, open space, or an enclosed environment must be maintained at all times. The requirement as it stands is for no less than 6 feet. At Novelos bus terminal this morning, passengers on board a commuter bus headed out of Belize City to other parts of the country, each seated less than 6 feet apart in either direction. That is now acceptable, providing that face mask is worn at all times. Here at St. Joseph Parish, the pews remain empty because Father Noah Leslie is only allowed to administer to a flock of only 10.
I saw that number as being too limited, and I did consult with some of my parishioners about the whole matter, and some of them said, you know what, just continue to live stream the masses and not have the weekday mass that we normally would have, because that would create a bit of confusion about who should be invited and so forth. So I believe that actually it should have been where, depending on the size of your structure, you have a small structure, then you use your wisdom and say, okay, we'll only allow so many people. The government have laid down the regulations concerning that, about how many people spend, depending on the size of your structure. If you have a large building, again, you don't want large numbers, but a reasonable amount of people could have been invited to come and participate, like say maybe 50 or so, or 60, and they'll be spaced out, practicing social distancing, wearing their masks, and so forth.
In most parishes, the Catholic Church in particular, attendance at Mass has been suspended since mid-March. With the gradual relaxation of the state of emergency, we've seen where other facilities have been opened up with guidelines to be adhered. The Church, in the opinion of many, should have been given similar directions.
Remember we said for the shops, the amount of people who could go into the shop depends on the size of the shop. Now in this case, look how big the church big. No more than 10 people. And if you're a church that small and can hold people, 10 people, so that they can be 1 pair of feet apart, then you can't hold 10 people. Because the social distancing laws and the protocols will trump anything that these allow you to do.
Social distancing, for all intents and purposes, is an exercise in basic math, calculating the space between persons in a given area. In observing the empty church, the pews can be calculated to reflect the distance each congregant would be away from his nearest neighbor. This can easily go up to 60 or 70 persons.
The way it is right now, you have a restaurant with an enclosed structure, and some are open, of course, and you have buses and so forth. And again, you allow so many people in those and in these enclosed places, whereas in our churches, the windows are wide open and everything else, doors are wide open. Some of us have our auditoriums and so forth. We could have chosen to use our auditoriums for worship, and our people have been quite flexible to be ready to use such facilities. So yes, I believe that yes, the numbers could have been increased depending on the size of the structure that you have.
As a result of COVID-19, certain key features of the Mass have also been foregone, including the sign of peace, as well as the Holy Communion. The Church, for the time being, has been forced to adapt to the changes brought about by the coronavirus pandemic, And while it is represented on the National Oversight Committee, it begs the question of whether these decisions were made rationally.
I know vex with we, you know, because the church people they sit down for the National Oversight Committee. So this is what was agreed to.
Reporting for News 5, I am Isani Cayetano.